Welcome Communication 101 students. This is part one of 3 screencasts entitled Introduction to the Field of Communication. And I'm going to open up with a quote that I have down here at the bottom of this slide. People spend 100% of their day communicating. As people, we are always communicating. You cannot shut it off. It is 24/7. You cannot not communicate. And that's what we're going to study, is how people do it. And we're going to, this quote will come back to us all semester. So let's begin. Goals for this particular screencast. Number 1, we're going to define communication. You should have a good working definition of what we're studying all semester. Number 2, we're going to look at meta communication. And again, this will happen all semester, but let's get a starting point with what meta communication is. Third, we're going to look at a basic communication model, and there's 7 parts to it. We'll get into most of those parts, and that's where I'll continue in part 2, is looking at messages in the model. But we'll look at the basic communication model. Next, what I want you to do in all the lectures, you're going to hear me say this, is I want students to listen and make connections between your own communication style and the ideas within the lecture. Really important. Can you listen to what we're talking about, take an idea, and then reflect on yourself and how it applies to you? I'll give you 2 final tips going into this PowerPoint and all the lectures. Number 1 is take notes, be active, and also another active strategy is tweet. You should try to tweet about 3 times during each lecture, and the hashtag is CO1011, or you can use any of these as well, at Prof. Maddie, hashtag LC Sharks, or at Landmark College. I'm really pushing you to use these hashtags to let us know. So that's where we're going. Let's begin and define communication. And so simply put, communication is what happens between people, and they're the messages that occur through and between us. So again, you never shut it off, and messages occur through and between people. They pass right through us. They're between us. And so that's really what communication is. It's the study of what happens between people. A little bit more with defining communication. People make communication together. We do it with others. It's something that is socially constructed, and we create communication with the help of others. We make communication together. Next, meaning is constructed by using verbal and nonverbal messages. And so we're going to hear a lot about the verbal and the nonverbal messages all semester. Next, how people understand the world with others. So communication helps us understand the world. And then we do that with others, and it's through a cause and effect of us acting and processing information. Moving on, now that we've defined communication and what it is, we're going to talk about meta communication. This will be a starting point for us, and we'll use meta communication all semester. So what is it? It's talking about how we talk and communicate. It's really the reflection on how people communicate. And so we unpack the process of all communication acts. That's what we'll be doing this semester. We will reflect on, we will analyze, we will look at, examine how communication works, and that is meta communication. This allows us to understand communication on a deeper level, and hopefully, no promises here, allows us to make it better. 2 primary questions that I want you to ask yourself, and you'll hear me say these questions all semester. They're vital to the course, and they're really vital to becoming a better communicator. Question number 1, what are we making with our communication? You should always ask yourself, as you reflect on any communication acts, what are we making with our communication? Second question, how are we making our communication? These 2 questions look at meta communication more closely, where we're thinking about, what are we making? Is the message getting through? Am I clear? Is it being understood? And also, how are we making it? How is it getting across? Is it getting across in the most effective manner? Am I sending out my message most effectively? These two primary questions you're going to hear me talk about a lot. You should think about them a lot, and you really should always kind of pull them out as you reflect on meta communication. Moving on. Here is the basic communication model. There's 7 parts, and I'm going to go into each one of these parts in more detail. You see sender receiver, message, channel, noise, effect, and context. So let's talk about each part. With regards to message, again, that'll be part 2. First, let's deal with the context. There's 4 parts to the context, and the first part is the physical context. The physical context contains all the physical elements in the environment. The chair you're sitting in, the desk, the computer, the headphones you have on. All of these things are part of the communication model context. And so you can think about the physical environment. It's too hot. It's muggy out. It's raining. All these elements contribute to the physical environment, and they all send messages. If you're sitting right now with your headphones on, looking at a computer screen, students should probably pick up on the cue that you're listening to something and you don't want to be distracted. Physical context. Next part of the context is the social psychological context. Let me break those down. The social context is who's in the room. What are the people's status? Is there power in the room? Power is always present in every act of communication and usually present in some social manner. So you can think about the roles that people have in the room. Student, professor, roommate to roommate, roommate to RA. All these elements of social context have power within them. The next element is psychological. That's what's going on in your head. You can think about, I'm tired. This is boring. I'm ADD and I'm distracted. Whatever psychologically is going on in your head is definitely part of the context. And so social psychological we group together, but they are 2 different pieces and very important to every contextual communication act. Time. Couple things about time. Number 1, time can usually be broken down in terms of episode. If you think about your favorite TV episode, you think about it, maybe it's a 20-minute episode. We break communication up into episodes or acts, and so those are broken up usually by time. The class could be considered an episode. Dinner time, another communication episode. But time of the day is also a factor here. So, how people feel at certain times, what time is it? And time will affect the communication context. Next, cultural context. Cultural context has to do with the rules people engage in communication by. And so many cultures have many different rules, and can we figure out what these cultural rules are? And if we can, it will help us be more effective in that context. Moving on, source, receiver. This is pretty straightforward. This is really where people judge mostly our communication competence. Speaker, listener, encoding, decoding. And so people really judge others by their ability to speak and listen. And so a big part of the model. Next part of the model is the channel. The channel is the way through which the message passes. How does the message get there? How does it reach us? And you can think about the 5 senses: vocal, visual, auditory, smell, and touch. And rarely does a message get from one place to another through only one channel. Usually it's voice and body, voice and intonation, voice and arms. In this situation, it's my voice and it's the computer screen. So rarely does a message get across with only one channel. So, and also I would say is the more channels you can use to send your message, the more effective your message will be and more likely it will be understood. Let's keep going. I said to write down 10 real life examples of channels of messages, so channels of communication. So if you want to hit pause right now, you can, and you can try to write down 10 potential channels that you might use to get your message across. Have at it. Now I'm going to pull up these channels. I wrote down several, but there's hundreds. There's more than hundreds. It's mouth, email, flyer on the wall, radio, cell phone, YouTube, social media, Facebook, Twitter, PowerPoint. These are all ways to get your message across. And again, the more you use, the more effective your message will be. Let's move on to noise. There's 4 parts and 4 different types of noise. The first is physical noise. Physical noise is what we think of as traditional noise that interferes with the message. My dog barking in the background, the dryer going, the lawnmower going by the window, a loud plane overhead, and those things that are physical noise that might interfere with the message getting across. I can't hear you because there's some other noise going on. Next is physiological noise. Physiological noise has to do with the body. If you look at this person in this picture, she clearly has a headache. And if she had a headache, that would be physiological noise. My headache is so overbearing, I cannot listen to the message. Physiological noise can also be a physical handicap. Someone who's blind, who can't see the nonverbal, can only hear the verbal. That would be physiological noise. It's an inability to hear the whole message. It's interfering with the message. Psychological noise would be ADD. Distracted from the message. I can't attend to the message. I am inattentive to it. It could also be if this person was annoyed, annoyance, emotions. Those would all be psychological noise. If your psychological noise was too loud, you would have a hard time really hearing the message. And so psychological noise is about the brain. And the last kind of noise is semantic. That's word meaning. Do you understand? If I'm using big old words that nobody understands, that would create semantic noise. Those are the 4 types of noise. Moving on. That's going to end it for this screencast. Some reflection points. Is communication something that people do or don't do? Can you choose not to communicate is my first question. Second, how is communication all around us? Think about that. And you can think about as you walk away and think about how communication is all around us. Are people, in fact, synonymous with communication? Can we use those 2 words interchangeably? And last question, can you create one communication goal from this lecture? I'm going to leave you with some questions that I want you to think about, which is, what are your favorite channels to get out your messages? So think about the ones you use the most and why you like them. Next, what are your least favorite channels and why? What channels of communication do you not use, do you not like to use, or you don't know how to use, or make you uncomfortable? And then the last question is, which type of noise plagues you the most? Come up with some real life examples of your noise that plagues you the most. With that, I'm going to end this screencast, and I hope you were able to get out 3 tweets and take notes. And I'll look forward to coming at you in part 2.